Yesterday morning, my daughter Emma called me, her voice trembling in a way that instantly told me something was wrong. "Mom," she sobbed, "they're towing my car. They're actually towing it. Please transfer the money right now. I'm begging you." I held the phone close, listening to her panic. There was a time when those tears would have broken me, when I would have rushed to my computer, logged into my account, and fixed whatever mess she'd gotten herself into this time. But not yesterday. Not after what she did the night before. So I said quietly, "Emma, you'll have to figure it out." And before she could respond, I ended the call. Silence filled the kitchen. I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. My hands weren't shaking, but my breath came shallow and sharp. It felt like I'd just cut a wire that had been strangling me for years. It hurt, but it also felt freeing. I know how cruel it sounds. I know what most people would think. What kind of mother does that? But to understand why I reached that point, I need to tell you what happened the night before. The night my daughter made me realize that love can rot when it's never returned. I'm 64 years old. A widow. I lost my husband Mark 8 years ago. Suddenly, in the middle of a quiet Sunday morning. One moment he was sitting beside me drinking coffee. The next, he was gone. No warning, no goodbye. Since then, I've done what I could to keep going. Some people fill their emptiness with hobbies, some with travel. I filled mine with Emma. She was all I had left. My only child, my reason to get up every day. I wanted to be the kind of mother who never failed her. And for years, I wasn't just her mother. I was her safety net, her backup plan, her invisible income. It started small like most things do. When she divorced her husband, she came home crying, saying she didn't know how she'd manage rent. I had just received a small inheritance from Mark's brother, and without thinking twice, I gave her half of it. "It's just until you're back on your feet," I said. She promised she'd pay me back. She never did. Then came the daycare bills for my granddaughter Lily. Then credit card debt. Then a business idea that needed startup money. Then temporary help for groceries that somehow lasted 3 years. Every time she asked, she had an excuse that sounded logical. And every time I believed her. Because that's what mothers do. We believe. We hope. And maybe deep down, I liked being needed. When you lose a husband, you lose the part of yourself that used to matter to someone. Helping Emma made me feel useful again. But over time, the gratitude disappeared. The requests became expectations. And before I realized it, I had become her personal ATM. A machine that dispensed money in silence. The night before everything changed, Emma invited me to dinner at her apartment. She said it was a special evening. Her tone was soft, even affectionate. Something I hadn't heard from her in months. Part of me thought maybe she was finally going to thank me. Maybe even apologize for the way she'd been treating me lately. I spent the afternoon baking her favorite dessert. Apple crumble. Just like I used to make when she was a little girl. I even wore Mark's old watch, the one he gave me on our 30th anniversary. It was a small, golden reminder of a time when family meant love, not transactions. When I arrived, the apartment was filled with laughter and the smell of wine. Emma's friends were there. 3 women and a young man I'd never met. Everyone seemed comfortable, relaxed, casual. I smiled trying to fit in, but I could already feel that invisible wall between generations, between my quiet politeness and their loud, careless chatter. "Mom," Emma said, hugging me loosely, her phone still in her hand. "You made it." She looked beautiful, her hair styled, her dress elegant. She'd always had that glow about her, the kind that drew attention. But there was something else in her eyes. Something sharp, like she was performing for an audience. We sat down to eat. At first, the conversation was pleasant. They complimented the food, asked me polite questions about my garden, laughed about work gossip. For a brief moment, I felt happy. Like I was part of something again. Then, after dessert, Emma raised her glass of wine and stood up. She tapped her spoon against it and said, "Everyone, I'd like to make a little toast." I smiled, waiting for the sentimental speech I thought was coming. "To my incredible mom," she began, her tone playful, her lips curling into that performative smile she always used when she wanted attention. "She's the reason I can live such a comfortable life. Honestly, without her, I'd probably be out there washing dishes or selling my jewelry. But thanks to her, I've learned the real secret to survival. You don't need financial independence when you can emotionally manipulate the right people." For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. But then her friends burst out laughing. One of them, a tall woman with bright red lipstick, added, "Oh my God, that's savage." Another said, "You're so bad, Emma." And the young man raised his glass and said, "To emotional manipulation." They clinked glasses, giggling. I sat frozen in my chair, my hands gripping my napkin so tightly I thought it might tear. My chest felt hollow. I waited for her to look at me and say, "I'm joking, Mom. You know I love you." But she didn't. She just winked at her friends and took a sip of wine. Something in me broke quietly, like a glass cracking under heat. I looked around the room, the same apartment I'd helped her furnish, the same table I'd paid for, the same wine glasses that had come from my kitchen when she said she couldn't afford new ones. And I realized, I was sitting inside my own generosity, being mocked for it. I didn't say a word that night. I simply stood up, put my napkin on the table, and said, "Excuse me." She barely noticed. She was too busy showing her friends something on her phone. Probably a new outfit she'd bought with the credit card under my name. I walked out of that apartment and into the night. The air was cold, sharp against my skin. I sat in my car for almost an hour, staring at the steering wheel, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. But I didn't cry. Not one tear. I think the pain was too deep for tears. For years, I'd excused her behavior. Told myself she was young, stressed, still figuring things out. But that night I understood the truth. She didn't see me as her mother anymore. To her, I was a service. A resource. A backup plan with a pulse. And that realization turned every ounce of my sadness into something colder. Something sharp and clear. I wasn't heartbroken. I was awake. When I got home, I made myself a cup of coffee even though it was almost midnight. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the steam rising from the mug, and whispered to myself, "This ends tonight." Then I opened my laptop. I started with the easiest part, the credit cards. I went through each one, clicking Cancel Additional Cardholder. Emma's name disappeared from 5 different accounts. It took less than 10 minutes. 10 minutes to erase 10 years of enabling. Then I moved on to the shared savings account. That one hurt the most because I'd opened it for family emergencies. But there had never been any real emergencies. Just last-minute vacations, unexpected shopping sprees, and expensive restaurant bills. I closed it, transferring every cent to my personal account. Next were the automatic transfers. Every month, I'd been sending her $1,200, rent money, supposedly temporary. I deleted the standing order. Gone. By the time I finished, it was nearly 3 o'clock in the morning. The house was silent except for the ticking of Mark's old clock in the hallway. I sat back in my chair, my eyes burning from exhaustion, but I felt lighter. As if I'd finally put down a weight I'd been carrying for years. For the first time since Mark died, I felt like I could breathe. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't need to. I just sat there, watching the sky outside my kitchen window turn from black to deep blue, then soft gray. At 6 a.m., I made a fresh pot of coffee and sat in my favorite armchair, the one Mark used to sit in on Sunday mornings. The room was filled with soft light. Peaceful. Almost sacred. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a woman who had finally stood up. I knew what would happen next. I knew the phone would ring. I knew she would call, panicking, confused, maybe even furious. And this time I would be ready. The call came at exactly 9:15 a.m. "Mom," she gasped. "What's going on?" My card got declined at the gas station. And at the grocery store. I tried another one, and it said, "Unauthorized user." What the hell is happening? I stayed silent for a moment, listening to her voice, the same voice that used to say, "I love you, Mom," when she wanted something, the same voice that laughed at me less than 12 hours ago. "Emma," I said softly, "I canceled the cards." There was a pause, a long, stunned silence. Then came the sharp inhale. "You what?" "I canceled them," I repeated. "And the joint account. And the transfers. It's time you start managing your own life." Her tone changed instantly, from confusion to anger. "Are you serious right now?" "Mom, I'm standing in front of the gas station, and people are staring at me. I have no cash, no working card, nothing. You can't just do that." "I can," I said quietly. "And I did." "You're insane," she snapped. "You can't just cut me off like that. What am I supposed to do?" "I have bills I have." "Then you'll have to figure it out," I interrupted. "Like I did when I was your age." She went silent for a second, then said something that made my heart twist. "You're a horrible mother." And before I could even process the words, she hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time. It didn't ring again. Just the faint hum of the refrigerator filled the room. My chest ached, not from guilt, but from the emptiness that follows when you finally stop giving what was never appreciated. I got up, poured myself another cup of coffee, and sat down again in Mark's armchair. His watch ticked softly on my wrist, steady and calm. I looked out the window, the autumn leaves falling in slow motion, the world going on as if nothing monumental had happened. But something had. Something irreversible. After a while, I whispered, "It's over, Emma." And for the first time in years I meant it. What I didn't know then was that my decision, the one that seemed so simple that morning, would unravel everything that came after. It would test not only my strength, but my love as a mother in ways I never imagined. Because cutting someone off financially is easy. Cutting them out of your heart, that's another story entirely. When I hung up the phone that morning, the silence in my house felt heavier than ever. You'd think cutting off your own child financially would bring some kind of instant peace, some satisfying wave of empowerment. But the truth is, it doesn't. Not right away. At first it just hurts. It feels unnatural, almost cruel. Because a mother's instinct is to protect, to fix, to rescue. Not to stand by and watch her child struggle. But I'd made my choice. And for once in my life, I wasn't going to undo it the moment guilt knocked at the door. Still, all morning, I couldn't shake the image of Emma standing there at that gas station. Angry, embarrassed, and probably crying. I knew what she must be thinking, that I'd betrayed her. That I was punishing her. But the truth was, I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was trying to save what little remained of me. By noon, my phone had already buzzed 15 times. Voicemails, texts, missed calls. "Emma, 8:02 a.m. Mom, what's going on? I can't even pay for gas." "Emma, 8:07 a.m. This isn't funny. My card's still not working." "Emma, 8:15 a.m. Did you forget to pay the bill again? Please check." "Emma, 8:40 a.m. Mom. Answer me. Nah." "Emma, 9:30 a.m. Fine. If you're doing this on purpose, you're evil." I read every message. I didn't reply. Each one chipped away at my resolve a little more. I could almost hear Mark's voice in my head. Calm, gentle, the way it always was when I panicked. "She'll never grow, Georgia, if you keep carrying her. Sometimes love means letting go." He used to say that when Emma was a teenager, back when she'd throw tantrums over curfews or failed tests. Back then, I'd always cave. I'd let her stay out late, rewrite the rules, make excuses to her teachers. Mark used to warn me that I was teaching her the wrong kind of love, the kind that expects, not the kind that appreciates. He was right. I wish I'd listened sooner. By 2 p.m., she finally stopped calling. The silence that followed was almost worse than the noise. My mind ran wild. What if she was stranded somewhere? What if she couldn't buy food? What if she... No. I stopped myself. Emma was 36 years old. Not a child. Not helpless. I made myself a sandwich and tried to distract my thoughts with an old gardening magazine. But as I flipped through the pages, my eyes landed on a photo of a mother and daughter planting flowers together. Laughing, covered in dirt, hands tangled in the soil. It hit me like a punch to the chest. That used to be us. When Emma was 7, she'd follow me into the garden every spring. She'd dig tiny holes and bury seeds with so much care you'd think she was planting gold. Every morning, she'd run out barefoot, eager to see if they'd grown. And when the first sprout appeared, she'd scream, "Mom, it's alive!" and hug me so tight my hat would fall off. That little girl had loved me with all her heart. What happened to her? Where did she go? Maybe she didn't disappear. Maybe I'd buried her myself, under years of yes. By late afternoon, my phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't a call. It was a notification from my bank. Withdrawal attempt denied. Insufficient authorization. I felt my stomach twist. Of course, Emma was still trying to use the old accounts. I logged in, checked the activity, and sure enough, 2 failed transactions. One for $350 at an electronics store, another for $120 at a salon. The irony wasn't lost on me. Even in crisis, her instinct was to spend. I sighed and closed the laptop. That's when I heard the sound of tires crunching on gravel outside. Then a car door slamming. Then quick, angry footsteps on my porch. I didn't even have to look to know who it was. The doorbell rang once. Then again. Then came the pounding. "Mom, open this door right now." I froze in the living room, heart racing. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home. But I knew Emma. She wouldn't leave. Not until she got answers. So I took a deep breath, smoothed my hands over my sweater, and opened the door. She stood there, flushed, furious, her hair in disarray, still wearing the same outfit from last night. Her mascara had smudged under her eyes, and I could tell she hadn't slept either. Behind her, the car she'd bought last year, the one I'd paid the down payment for, was parked crookedly across my driveway. "Are you out of your mind?" she snapped. The anger in her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "You canceled everything? My cards, my accounts, even the phone bill? What the hell is wrong with you?" I didn't answer right away. I just stepped aside and said, "Come in." She stormed past me, her perfume filling the air, and dropped her bag on the couch. "This is insane, Mom. You embarrassed me in front of everyone today. My card got declined at 2 stores. Do you know how humiliating that is?" I closed the door slowly, leaning against it for balance. Her words rolled off me, not because I didn't care, but because I'd already cried all those tears years ago. "Emma," I said softly, "you embarrassed me last night in front of your friends. Do you know how humiliating that was?" She blinked, clearly not expecting that. "What are you talking about?" "The toast," I said. "The one where you told your friends you manipulate people instead of working for things. The one where they all laughed, and you laughed with them." She froze, her eyes flickering with something. Guilt, maybe, or shame, but only for a second. "Oh, for God's sake," she scoffed. "It was a joke, Mom. Don't be so dramatic." "A joke," I repeated, my voice trembling. "That's what you call it? A joke?" She crossed her arms. "Yes. You're taking everything too seriously. You always do." I felt something rise inside me. A slow, deep anger that had been buried under years of softness. "No, Emma," I said. For years, I took everything too quietly. She rolled her eyes. So what? You're cutting me off now? Is that it? After everything I've been through, you're just done helping your own daughter. Helping? I whispered. Emma, what I've been doing isn't helping. It's drowning. And I've been the one underwater. Her voice cracked. I needed you. You don't understand how hard it's been. I raised my hand gently. No, Emma. You don't understand how hard it's been for me. Losing your father. Trying to hold everything together. Watching my savings disappear, not because of emergencies, but because my daughter can't live without luxury. Her eyes filled with tears, but her pride didn't let them fall. So that's it? You're done? You're just cutting me out of your life. I'm cutting the cords, I said. Not you. You can come to me for advice, for love, for dinner, for company. But not for money. Never again. She stared at me, breathing heavily, her lip trembling. Then she grabbed her bag, stormed toward the door and hissed. You'll regret this, Mom. You'll regret pushing me away. And then she was gone. The house felt emptier than ever after she left. Her perfume lingered in the air like a ghost. I sank into the couch, shaking. I wanted to feel strong, proud, free. But instead I felt hollow. I walked into Mark's study, sat down at his old desk, and opened one of his notebooks. He used to jot down little quotes, lines from books or sermons that meant something to him. On one page, I found this written in his neat handwriting. If you always pick them up, they'll never learn how to stand. I read it 3 times. And for the first time since he died, I felt like he was sitting right there beside me. That night, I couldn't eat. I just sat in the dark, listening to the old clock tick. Every sound in the house felt louder, the pipes, the creaking floors, even the wind against the windows. I thought about calling her, just to say I loved her. But then I remembered how she looked at me, not like a daughter looks at her mother, but like a customer angry at poor service. And I couldn't do it. Around midnight, I finally went to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. My mind replayed every moment of her childhood, the good and the bad. Her first day of school, her first heartbreak, the night she called me crying after the divorce. All those times I'd held her, comforted her, told her it would be okay, and somehow it always was because I made it so. And now, she hated me for not fixing things. The guilt came in waves. But underneath it, there was something steadier, a quiet sense of conviction. This pain had a purpose. It was the cost of breaking free. The next morning, the phone didn't ring. No messages. No calls. Just silence. For 2 days, nothing. I went through my routine like a ghost, watering my plants, making tea, sitting by the window. Every few hours, I'd glance at my phone, half hoping to see her name, half dreading it. On the 3rd morning, I drove into town to pick up groceries. While waiting in line, I overheard 2 women talking about their grown sons. One of them complaining about how he never visits, the other saying, "At least he calls when he needs something." I smiled faintly. That used to be me. I used to think that being needed was the same as being loved. But now I knew better. When I came home, there was an envelope in the mailbox. No stamp, just my name scribbled on the front. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Inside was a short note. I hope you're happy. I can't believe you're doing this to your own daughter. Don't worry. I'll figure it out. Emma. No love. No apology. Just bitterness wrapped in defiance. I folded the note carefully and placed it in Mark's notebook, right beside his quote. Then I whispered, I hope she does figure it out. That night, the wind picked up outside. The trees brushed against the windows like fingers. I made myself tea and sat in Mark's old armchair, staring into the darkness. I missed her. God, I missed her. Even with all the anger, the disrespect, the hurt, she was still my little girl somewhere inside. The one who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms and whisper, "Don't let go." But I had let go. And that's what terrified me. Was I being strong? Or just heartless? Was this love? Or punishment? The questions spun in my head like ghosts until I couldn't think anymore. I must have dozed off at some point because the next thing I knew, I woke up to a faint sound. 3 soft knocks on the door. I checked the clock. It was past midnight. The knocks came again. Slow, hesitant, trembling. I froze. Something in my gut told me I already knew who it was. I stood up slowly, heart pounding, and walked toward the door. Through the glass, I could see the faint outline of a figure. Shoulders slumped, head bowed, hair blowing in the wind. I hesitated for a moment, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Then I turned it and pulled the door open. There she was. Emma. Standing on my porch in the dark, her mascara streaked, eyes swollen from crying. She looked nothing like the proud, sharp-tongued woman who'd stormed out 2 days earlier. She looked like my daughter again. "Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking. And before she could say anything else, the tears came, quiet, heavy, unstoppable. I didn't say a word. I just stepped aside and let her in. When I opened the door that night and saw Emma standing there, I almost didn't recognize her. Her eyes were red and swollen, her makeup streaked across her face like paint washed by rain. She looked small. Not physically, but in spirit. The same woman who had stormed out 2 days ago full of fire now stood on my porch trembling like a frightened child. For a long moment, neither of us said a word. We just looked at each other. The cold wind blew through the space between us, and in that silence, I felt the weight of everything. The hurt, the love, the history. "Mom," she finally whispered, her voice breaking. I didn't know where else to go. Those words cut through me like a blade. Part of me wanted to take her in my arms right then, to wipe her tears and tell her it would all be okay, like I used to. But another part, the part that had learned the hard way, knew that if I did, nothing would ever change. So I stepped aside and said softly, "Come in." She walked past me into the warm glow of the living room, her footsteps hesitant. I closed the door behind her and followed quietly. She didn't sit right away. She stood near the armchair where Mark used to read his paper, staring at the floor. Her hands were shaking. "I haven't eaten since yesterday," she murmured. I nodded toward the kitchen. "There's soup on the stove." She nodded, wiping her face with her sleeve, and disappeared into the kitchen. I heard her open cabinets, clinking spoons and dishes, sounds that somehow made the house feel alive again. When she came back, she held a bowl of soup, steaming gently, her hands wrapped around it like she was holding on to warmth itself. She sat on the couch and took a small sip. Her shoulders started to shake again, and this time she couldn't hide it. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean any of it. Not the joke. Not what I said. I was just trying to sound funny. You know, to make them laugh." I sat down across from her. I didn't interrupt. I wanted her to talk, to really talk, for once, without me jumping in to soften the blow. She put the bowl down and covered her face with both hands. "I don't even know why I said those things," she sobbed. I don't know who I've become anymore." Her words hung in the air like smoke. And for the first time in a very long time, I saw not the woman who used me, but the broken little girl beneath her. Scared, lost, trying to keep up with a life she'd built on illusions. "Emma," I said quietly, "you've been living like the world owes you something. But it doesn't. Nobody does. Not even me." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know," she whispered. "I just didn't realize it until now." That night, she stayed on the couch. I gave her a blanket, a pillow, and the quiet comfort that comes when words run out. We didn't talk anymore. We just let the silence do what years of conversations never could. Heal. I didn't sleep much. I sat in my room, the door slightly open, listening to the faint sound of her breathing. Every now and then, she'd sniffle or turn in her sleep, And I'd feel this strange ache, part guilt, part relief. Because for the first time in years, she was here. But not because she wanted something. She was here because she needed something deeper. Accountability. Clarity. A place to fall that wouldn't catch her too easily. In the morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains. I found her sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in her hands. Her eyes were puffy but softer. There was no anger in her anymore, only exhaustion. She looked up when I walked in. "Mom," she said, her voice hoarse, "I've been thinking a lot. About everything." I poured myself some coffee and sat across from her. "Go on," I said. She took a deep breath. "I've made a mess of my life. I always thought I was independent because I had my own place, my own car, my own life. But none of it was mine. It was all you. Every bit of it." I stayed quiet. "I guess I just never thought it would end," she continued. "You were always there. I'd screw up, and you'd fix it. I'd overspend, and you'd cover it. And I started thinking that was love. That love meant never letting me fall. But you were right. You didn't help me. You kept me weak." Her honesty hit me harder than I expected. Because hearing her say it, in her own words, made me realize something too. I hadn't just enabled her. I'd needed her dependency to fill the hole her father's death left behind. We'd both been using each other. She for money. Me for meaning. "I'm not asking you to take me back," she said after a long pause. "I just wanted you to know that I get it now." I studied her face. Tired, humbled, but somehow freer. It reminded me of the day she moved out after college, eyes full of fear and excitement. That same innocence, now scarred but alive again. "I believe you," I said quietly. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I want to start over, Mom. On my own this time. I don't know where to begin." I smiled faintly. Beginnings always look scary. But they're easier than staying stuck. She let out a shaky laugh. "You always have a quote ready." "That one was your father's," I said. "He used to tell me that whenever I was too scared to make a change." At the mention of him, her expression softened even more. "I miss him," she whispered. "I know," I said. "So do I." We sat there for a while, letting his memory bridge the silence between us. The next week, Emma found a job at a local boutique. Part-time at first, but it was something. She sold clothes, organized displays, learned how to manage customers. She called me every few days, not to ask for money, but just to talk. Sometimes we'd chat about her work, sometimes about the weather, sometimes about nothing at all. It was new, strange, beautiful. One day, she came over after her shift, her hands rough from unpacking boxes. She smiled shyly and said, "You know, it feels good to earn something and not owe anyone for it." I hugged her. And in that simple moment, something healed between us. Not completely, but enough. It wasn't all easy. There were days she struggled, when rent was tight, when bills piled up. But instead of calling me, she found ways to manage. She sold old clothes, took extra shifts, even started making handmade jewelry on weekends to earn a little more. And slowly, the bitterness faded. The pride, the entitlement, they melted away, replaced by something new, gratitude. 3 months later, on a quiet Saturday morning, she showed up at my door again. This time, she wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was smiling, a calm, genuine smile I hadn't seen in years. In her hands, she held a small bouquet of daisies. "For you," she said. "I know they're not fancy, but they reminded me of your garden. Remember when we used to plant them together?" My throat tightened. I took the flowers, their scent soft and simple, and said, "Of course I remember." She stepped inside and looked around. "Everything looks the same," she said softly. "Even the clock." I nodded. "Your father's clock still works, even after all these years." She smiled faintly. He'd be proud of you, you know. I looked at her surprised. Proud of me? Yes, she said. For finally standing up. For standing up to me. I laughed. Not out of humor, but relief. Because those were the words I never thought I'd hear from her. We spent that afternoon together, cooking, talking, reminiscing. She told me about her job, her coworkers, her plans to save enough money to move into a smaller apartment she could afford on her own. She sounded different, grounded, hopeful, alive. At one point, she looked at me and said, "You know, Mom, I used to think money was the only way you showed love. But now I realize love was all the things you did that didn't cost a dime. Listening, showing up, believing in me even when I didn't deserve it." Tears stung my eyes. I reached across the table, took her hand and said, "And I should have realized sooner that love isn't always rescuing. Sometimes it's letting go." She squeezed my hand gently. I guess we both had to learn. As evening fell, she got up to leave. She hugged me tightly at the door, longer than she had in years. "I love you, Mom," she whispered. "I love you too, sweetheart." She pulled back and looked at me, smiling through tears. "Thank you. For everything. Even for cutting me off. Especially for that." I watched her walk down the path, her posture straighter, her steps lighter. The car she drove now wasn't new. She'd sold the expensive one I'd helped buy and gotten a used sedan instead. But she owned it. Completely. As she drove away, the last rays of sunlight bathed the garden in gold. The daisies on my table caught the light, glowing softly, fragile but alive, just like her. That night, I sat in my favorite armchair, Mark's armchair, with a cup of tea and the bouquet beside me. The house was quiet again, but this time, the silence didn't ache. It comforted. I opened Mark's old notebook, the one where I'd tucked Emma's angry note weeks ago. Beside it, I wrote a new one in my own handwriting. "She figured it out, Mark. You were right. Love isn't about keeping them safe. It's about letting them find their own way home." I closed the notebook, placed it on the shelf, and leaned back. Outside, the wind rustled the trees gently. Not angry this time, but peaceful, like a sigh of relief. I thought about everything that had happened. The pain, the distance, the harsh words, the quiet nights filled with doubt. And I realized something simple but profound. Sometimes, the only way to save a relationship is to let it break first. To let the pieces fall, so you can rebuild them on truth instead of dependency. Emma and I had finally done that. We'd both learned that love isn't a bank account. It's not measured in money or favors or rescues. It's measured in boundaries, honesty, and the courage to grow. I smiled to myself, took a sip of my tea, and whispered into the quiet. For the first time in years, I feel like a mother again. Not a wallet with legs. And as the clock ticked softly in the corner, I knew that both of us, my daughter and I, were finally beautifully free.